Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolutions, sponsored by Jointflows even. Today we're joined by Mike Adams, who is the founder and CEO of Introstars, also the king of networking. He's been to thousands of events and king of lead generation as well. Um, Welcome to the show, Mike. How are you?
Thank you so much, Hitesh. So glad to be here. Very excited to speak to you today and how we can change the world of lead generation.
Love that. Love that. So we always like to start off with a little bit of an introduction. So bring our listeners up to speed. Who is Mike Adams? How have you got to where you've got to? And tell us a little bit about Introstars as well.
Sure. I've been working in sales and marketing for more than 28 years in big tech companies like Apple, HP, Zoom, lots of smart tech companies as well. And doing all of that, one thing I really loved is networking. I started networking 10 years ago, my first ever networking event. And very quickly, I became addicted to networking, going to 10, 15 events a week, 3 events a day, drinking way too much red wine, talking to random strangers, and absolutely loved it. Built a pipeline of more than 5 million pounds of business, purely networking. Zero cold calls, zero cold emails, just networking. So I really loved the concept of networking, connecting people together. And that's when I came up with the idea of my own startup, which is Introstars, which is a marketplace for high value paid business introductions, where people can earn thousands of pounds by just introducing people to each other. And so today, I've launched Introstars a couple of months ago, and that's what I'm really passionate about, which is connecting millions of people and helping people get warm introductions to their ideal customers while helping introducers get paid for every introduction. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm also a big fan of the startup ecosystem. I'm mentoring lots of startups, investing in lots of startups. And I'm still going to lots of networking events, sharing my networking knowledge and helping others become super networkers like myself. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Well, congratulations on the launch of Intrastars. For our listeners, it's definitely worth checking out. We've had a little bit of a look, and it's definitely intriguing to me, and I'm sure it's going to be very successful. So where do we start, Mike? I know you're the king of lead generation as well as networking. I guess let's start on lead generation to begin with. It's quite topical. We've seen a lot of changes in the market in terms of how people do lead generation, in particular with the introduction of AI into the everyday lifestyle of SDRs now as well and AEs. Talk a little bit about that. What's your opinion on the direction of lead generation and in particular the introduction of AI and how that's impacting the way people work and the way people are being prospected as well?
Absolutely. So, no, I've been working lead gen for more than 10 years, working with lots of sales leaders, head of sales, CROs, startup founders, and lead gen is always top of mind for nearly every founder out there. I usually ask people, what is your number one challenge? And nearly all of them say lead generation, right? So we're all very much aware this is the number one issue for most sales leaders or founders or companies simply trying to grow. And up until now, if you think about lead generation, the first thing that pops into most people's head is cold outreach, meaning sending a million cold emails, doing a million cold calls a week, trying to have, even with a very low response rates, trying to convert a few of these cold emails or cold calls into paying customers. And that's how it's always been done. That's how it's still being done today. And with the advent of AI, we're just accelerating that with even more cold outreach, even more cold calls, more cold emails. But the problem with that, of course, with that approach, is that the response rates keep going down and down and down. People don't like cold calls. People don't like cold emails. As I'm sure most of you listening to this podcast are being spammed and bombarded every single day with cold calls, cold emails, cold LinkedIn messages. And so those response rates are going down, and people are getting more and more sophisticated using AI spam filters to block these incoming cold emails or incoming cold calls. And so it becomes really a war of AI versus AI spam bots versus AI spam filters. And this is a zero-sum game where over time, over maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, those response rates are going to go to zero. Like no one will open a cold email anymore. No one will pick up a cold call anymore because of this overwhelming AI spam happening day in, day out. And so for me, that is really the wrong approach doing outbound or lead generation. Doing cold calls or cold emails is not the right way to do it. So how do we change that? How do we change that into something more positive where people actually want to talk to you? And the answer is moving away from cold calls and cold emails and instead moving to warm introductions, warm referrals, because that is based on trust. You trust people, and if those trusted people reach out to you with an email or a call, you will actually pick up the phone or read that email because you know those people, you trust them. And so that is the revolution, which is focusing on warm introductions and warm referrals. Now, the problem with warm introductions, warm referrals is how do you scale that? As a business, if your entire lead generation strategy is based on warm referrals, how do you scale that to have a regular incoming stream of these warm introductions? And that's really the challenge everyone is trying to solve. And so up until now, when you think about referral programs, a lot of that is focused on asking your existing customers to send you referrals to other people they know. And that's a very valid way of doing it, which is perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that. The problem is you might end up annoying your customers, always asking them for referrals. It makes you sound a bit desperate, always asking your customers, hey, can you please introduce me to someone else, right? And so what I'm thinking about is how do you expand that outside of your existing customer base? And that's where you start to create paid referral programs, where you incentivize people outside of your customer base to send you warm introductions, warm referrals to people they know and people who trust them. And for me, that is the revolution, setting up paid referral programs to incentivize an army of introducers to send you those warm introductions. Now, up until now, most of these paid referral programs were done kind of under the table as a quick gentleman's agreement, maybe a quick email back and forth, but there was no easy way to promote your paid referral program to a wide network of introducers. So this is where Introstars is changing the game. That's what we're capitalizing on to start broadcasting those paid referral programs.
Yeah, I like it. I'm a client, and I've met you a few weeks ago. I think it's a really good idea, and in fact, it's something we've tried to do manually. Like we just to align on a lot of things with you, Mike. You're French a little bit, which makes it easier for me to like.
Yeah, I'm Belgian, so I speak French. You can speak French all day long.
Yeah, not today, because I wouldn't know what you guys are talking about. So the French will go over my head. I got
French
bonjour,
mafia, the French
I
connection.
know comme ci comme ça, and au revoir. That's about it.
Pas mal, pas mal.
Not bad, not bad. So I've got a background on I've led teams in outbound companies, basically similar to yours, I guess, but slightly different company. And I've grown tired of generic emails, templated emails, automated sequences, cadences. Do you feel like the cold email, cold outreach play is ever going to recover, or is it dead for good now?
I think it's dying a slow death. So I think today, right now, you can still do cold outbound, whether it's cold calls or cold emails. It still works. So you will still get some responses and you'll still get some potential closed deals. But it's just that response rate is just going down and down and down, and your conversion rates are going down and down and down. So I still think that today you can still do it, but again, it's getting harder and harder and harder. And so you basically have to spam even more people to get a lower response rate to close even one deal. Now, the other issue with that, it's not just that the response rates are going down. The other issue, of course, is projecting your personal brand image as a spammer, right? The more cold emails you send, the more people start to perceive you, hey, you're a spam, you just spam me with one of your automated emails. And basically people really don't like that. So it really damages your personal brand and also damages the brand of your company. Now, most people selling AI prospecting tools pretend that AI makes it so amazing that no one will tell it's an AI. They'll think, oh no, it's a real personalized emails. But I can tell people can tell it's AI. Even the best AI tool out there, I receive those messages every single day. I can tell it's been written by AI. It's very obvious to me. And so I think that's the other issue. The more you start using those AI prospecting tools, the more you're damaging your personal reputation and your personal brand image. And that's not good. You want to build a long-term brand image as a great person to work with. And so that's another reason why it's better to focus on warm referrals and warm introduction from trusted people instead of using AI spam bots.
Yeah. Like it feels like there's always been a big hype around
you need to create a partner channel but in a corporate. So you've got a partner manager who then go into B2B partners and then trying to get warm leads from that source. And from my experience, and he's probably finding the same thing. The success of these initiatives are often very, very low. Like I've been in a lot of companies, and partnership was extremely hard to measure and to link to a dollar number. Now, I think what you guys are doing is very different because it's using your own network in order to find people you're already connected with a similar affinity to what there is to sell. And we've tried to do that manually, as I was saying at Jointflows. We've got an agent program essentially, which is, you could call it a commission only program, but it's very well paid. But we've never been able to scale it because of the limited access to those networks we could leverage. Like, what's your take? How do you become a good um introducer in your what's your idea of this, how you need to do it in order to both make money but also don't burn your own network?
So very good point you're making there. My background is channels. I was partner manager at Zoom for nearly 5 years.
Yeah.
I was in the channel for many, many years before that. So my whole experience, my whole career has been working with channel partners. So I'm glad you bring it up. And channel partners, as you said, are very difficult to manage. It's hard to motivate them. It's hard to keep them on board. It's hard for them to push your solution when they can push 5 other competitive solutions as well. And so managing a channel is a massive challenge. But it can definitely work. It definitely has some good results, but it requires a lot of investment. Now, the problem with most channel programs is you're asking the channel partner to do most of the work. They have to find customers, they have to sell, they have to send quotes, they have to deliver the product or service. So it's just asking them for a lot of effort. So what the whole channel industry has shifted towards in the last couple of years is moving towards referral programs. So referral programs means the channel partner simply sends you a referral. You sell the product or the service yourself directly to the end user and then pay them a referral fee, a referral commission. And that's working more and more. You see many more big tech companies moving towards that type of model, which is purely referrals. Instead of having the channel partner do everything, they just send referrals and get paid for it. And so that's really the model I'm capitalizing on with Introstars, which is purely a referral model, not a resell model, where the partner doesn't have to do much work. They just have to send you a customer, boom, just a quick referral, and it's all done. The difference is with typical channel partners have to jump through lots of hoops to sign up as a partner. Whereas with Introstars, it's literally one click away. One click, you're in, and you can sign up right away as a partner. There's no onboarding. There's no long training process or sign up process. To just make it much easier to scale to thousands of partners to sign up in a few clicks instead of a long onboarding process. I think that is the revolution. The other revolution is typical channel partner programs rely on partners being companies with a bunch of people they have to train. Whereas with Introstars, it's individuals, not companies. Individual person can sign up to be a referral partner. And that's a massive difference. It means instead of signing a few partners in terms of companies, you sign up to thousands and thousands of introducers who become your partners. So that's also a big difference where it, again, is super easy, make it super scalable to reach a much wider audience of introducers instead of a few limited channel partners. I think that is the revolution. That's what Introstars brings to the table. And we're very excited to change that whole partner model into an introducer model.
Yeah, I think you've hit some good notes there as well. And I'm quite aligned with what Mick said earlier on. We've both had experiences where we found it difficult to drive partner channel models forward and make them fruitful. One thing that I came to mind when you were speaking is that when you're working at a more established, well-recognized company like Zoom, to be able to get those referrals, it tends to be a little bit easier because it's a recognized brand than if you're working at a startup. What some of the advices that you can give to, well, twofold question. One is to be able to put in a referral program that starts to move the needle because you're still somewhat of an unknown. And then the second is from a partner channel perspective, the same question, I guess, is how can you drive a partnership model forward with another company as a startup, as opposed to, you know, a well-known, recognized global brand as Zoom were?
Yeah. And to be honest, a big company like Zoom has pros and cons, because since everyone already knows Zoom, you'd imagine most end customers, end users will go directly to Zoom without going via a partner, because everyone already knows it. So that actually plays against the channel program, where most end users will say, well, I don't need a partner. I can go to Zoom directly. I could just go to the Zoom website, right? So that's why there's actually a disadvantage of running a channel program for a large established company like Zoom. Whereas when you're a small startup trying to find potential customers, it's all based on introductions and referrals, where people officially recommend you to their network. So that actually plays in your advantage, where if you can build trust with a few introduction partners, they'll recommend you to people who've never heard of you. And so that really will kind of help you get those end users speaking to you. Second thing you can do is, of course, be generous. Be generous with your introduction fees. If you're a small company, you pay a very generous referral fee, like 30% of a deal or 50% of a deal, because you really want to have those initial customers as success stories to establish yourself to become a big brand like Zoom one day in the future, right? And so that's one way you can do it, is be super generous with your introduction fees. And then third of all, is have success stories. If you can have a few success stories where you really receive an introduction from a referral partner and you then close a deal, promote that success stories and promote that success story, and that will incentivize more introducers to send you referrals your way. So I think success story is a good way to do it. And then the other way to do it is to go to as many networking events as possible to promote your referral program to as many introducers as possible. So that will also give you a benefit, building those personal relationships with introducers.
Yeah,
I just have just one question on before we move on to another topic. I think there's a little bit of reluctance sometimes for people to join a referral program. Like I've had a few conversations, and they're concerned about their current employer finding out, and then there could be a breach of contract, and then there could be a conversation to be had if at some point you miss a quota or something. You know, well, you should be focused on the job fully as opposed to, you know, work with different companies. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, very good point. So there are a few things there. So the last point you mentioned is you should focus your energy on your day job and not on making introductions for other people on the side. But the reality is, to make an introduction for someone else really only takes a few minutes. It takes like 5 minutes tops, like 3 emails to send. So it's not like it's distracting you from your day job. It's literally like 5 minutes. You could do this on the weekend, in the evening. Making an introduction is really quick. So I don't think that's really an argument that could distract you from your day job, because again, it takes so little time, can easily be done weekends and evenings. So for me, that's not a big problem. The biggest issue you mentioned, the first one you mentioned, could be really a conflict of interest. If you're working with a customer with your employer during your day job, you then introduce that same customer to someone else via a referral program like Introstars. So that could be a conflict of interest in some cases. So obviously, you should not introduce your existing customer to one of your competitors. I mean, that's an obvious conflict of interest. But if you introduce them to a completely different company who sells a completely different service, irrelevant to yours, in most cases, it shouldn't be a problem. However, you should obviously check with your employment contract, check with your manager, and check with your employment contract what is considered a conflict of interest and what is not. And that really varies on a case-by-case basis. You know, I cannot make a blanket statement that it's always going to be okay, or it's always not going to be okay. Like you cannot say that. I mean, every employer is a different employment contract with specific clauses about conflicts of interest. So if you work in sales for a specific employer, check what your contract says, check with your manager if it's okay for you to make referrals to other companies or not, right? And I think you have to use your best judgment. You know, most of this is a bit of a gray area, to be fair. And so it's a bit, use your own judgment. You know, don't introduce your customers to a direct competitor. That's an obvious conflict of interest. You shouldn't do that. But again, if you're just helping someone else who's in a completely different industry, most cases should be fine, right? Use your judgment.
By the way, I'm on your side, Mike. I think it's completely BS rule set. This is a protective language to it's the same as going back to the office, right? It's just try and maximize the level of control you've got over employees.
Yeah.
And I think people should be able to monetize. I agree with the direct competitive overlap. I think you should not do that, obviously, and it's against your own interest to do that anyway.
Of course.
But you should be able to monetize your own network. I don't see why this belongs to some other companies to some reason.
Absolutely. But again, there are some gray areas where if you met a customer via your existing employer, because they're a customer of your existing employer, then who does that contact belong to? Is it your employer? Is it yourself? Again, there's a bit of a gray area there. So again, use your own judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Mike, I introduced you as the king of events up at the top of the introduction as well. So it's only right for our listeners that we speak a little bit about events as well. So as someone who's gone to as many events as you have, you're obviously somewhat of an expert. And I know if I cast my mind back to pre-COVID, the company I was at were quite big on events. We used to go to quite a lot of events as well, but I often found that they weren't as fruitful as we wanted them to be. And at the time, I felt for my team at least that we were better investing in outbound activities through, your traditional prospecting methods like email, cold calls, and things like this. And we were generating a better outcome from it. So my question to you is now, obviously in the last year or so, it seems as if people are steadily going back to more and more events. Networking is becoming more and more of a thing again. What's the best way to maximize the outcome in these events? Everybody wants an outcome, and the outcome that typically everyone's looking for is leads, right? Opportunity to close business.
Absolutely. And three, when you say events, I mean really networking, right? Networking is the game, business networking, meaning going to events where you have other people who are there also for business networking. And for me, that's really kind of a revolution in the role of an SDR or a BDR. If you look at the job description of a BDR or SDR, it is to generate leads, right? But most BDRs and SDRs are compensated based on how many calls they made or how many emails they've sent. And for me, that's where we need to change the game. And I think that moving forward, the role of an SDR or BDR should also include in-person business networking events. Because that is really, I think, the gold mine to generate leads is to go to as many in-person business networking events as possible. But here's the thing. If you go to a business networking event to try to find a customer, you go to an event and you're trying to sell your product or service to the people you meet at the event, that is the completely wrong approach to do it. You will fail miserably. Because when you go to a networking event, if you're trying to sell your product to someone else, they're going to sense that you're trying to sell them something, and that's going to push them away. They're going to walk away, brush you off saying, oh, this guy or this girl is trying to sell me something. So that is really the wrong way to do it. Instead of that, when you go to a business networking event, your goal is not to sell. Your goal is to build trust and relationship with other people going to that event, right? To build that trust. And over time, if they ever come across a potential customer for you, they will send you a referral. And vice versa. You meet interesting people at the networking event. If a few weeks or a few months down the line, you meet a potential customer for them, you will make an introduction for them. And that's how you build your goodwill with other super networkers who go to these events. And so really your mindset going to all these networking events is not to have a quick sale, to have a quick lead right there and then to close a deal. That's never, ever going to happen. So what you need to do is go there with the mindset you want to help other people, you want to introduce people to them, you want to meet interesting people, build relationship, build partnership, help others by connecting them, connecting the dots for them. And if you go with that mindset, you'll always be successful. And my experience has been that every time I went to all these networking events, I met people who are super connectors, super networkers. People go to these events every single day, meeting loads of people. And I became friends with those people because my goal was to try to help them, was not to try to sell them anything. I never tried to sell anything. I just wanted to understand who their typical customers are, what are they looking for. I'm trying to help them by introducing them to people I know. And over time, they will send me introductions as well. So really, your goal at networking events is to meet other networkers who can in turn introduce you to potential customers further down the line. And you should do the same. You should try to introduce them to customers. because that's how you do it. And that's how the whole networking game works, is by meeting other networkers, helping each other, introduce them to potential clients, and they will introduce you to potential clients. So it's really the indirect connections, not the direct people you meet there, will become your clients. And with that approach, you're always successful. And so it's a long-term game, right? If you're an SDR, BDR, don't go to one event hoping you're going to close a deal right there and then. That's never going to happen. Instead of that, go to 5, 10, 20 events. And over time, you'll build those relationships. And over time, you will receive introductions and you'll make introductions.
Yeah, no, great advice. Great advice. Somewhat of a basic question for you. I know within Jointflows, at least, we're quite generous with referrals as well, not just for referrals coming in, but also whenever we know of someone within our network and we can match them up, you know, an offering versus a solution, we'll do it. You know, we're happy to do it without any kind of compensation or anything as well. It's just about helping out people within our network. Going into networking events, however, can for some people be intimidating as well. You know, you're going into a room full of people who you don't know. What's some advice you can give there to allow people to be more comfortable within their surroundings there, or advice on how you can kind of, I don't know, fit in is the right word, but hit the ground running with these things?
Absolutely. And if you're new to the networking game, going to networking events, it is always a bit intimidating. The more you do it, the more you feel comfortable. Now, what you need to think about is when you go to a networking event, most of these business networking events are full of B2B salespeople trying to find customers just like you. And so if you go with the approach that you're there to have fun, meet cool people, help each other, have a nice drink, have funny conversation, typically you're going to be less intimidated than if you go there to try to sell something and find a customer. So again, your mindset is the number one thing you can change to feel more comfortable and more relaxed. So again, repeating what I said before, when you go to a networking event, don't go there to sell, go there to meet friendly people, have fun, help other people. With that mindset, you'll be a bit more comfortable, a bit more relaxed. Second of all, don't forget that all the other people going to that event are literally in the same shoes as you are. They're all trying to get introductions as well. They're all trying to sell as well. And so don't be shy to speak to them because they're happy for you to speak to them. It's not like you're interrupting them or bothering them. If they go to a networking event, they want to talk to you. They want to talk to as many people as possible. And so if you go into a networking event, feel free to speak to everyone there because they're all happy to speak to you. You're never going to want to have someone at a networking event who doesn't want to speak to you. You know, that's impossible. If they don't want to speak to anyone, they wouldn't go to a networking event in the first place. Right? So they all go there with the same intention as you, which is to talk to people. Third of all, you know, it's a bit intimidating if you walk into a room and everyone is in small groups. They're all talking like 2 or 3 people left, right, and you're the only person all by yourself. It is a bit intimidating. And so don't be afraid to walk into a group of 2 or 3 people, to interrupt them and say, hey, guys and girls, can I join your group, please? Because they won't be offended or annoyed because, again, they're there to speak to more people, right? So don't be shy to go and interrupt people, say, hey, can I join you? Is that okay? What I don't recommend doing is creeping, you know, joining a group without saying anything and kind of creeping behind
Just
them.
standing there.
Just standing there. I do not recommend that. Instead, it's better to interrupt them, to make yourself known, say, hey, can I interrupt you? Can I join you? Like, even if you're cutting them halfway through the sentence, I think that's a better way to do it instead of creeping out as the creepy guy or girl and showing up in their conversation, right? I think that's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Again, practice makes perfect. Now, if you don't know who to talk to, my typical strategy is to go to the bar. While I'm waiting for a drink at the bar, speak to the person standing next to you at the bar and say, hey, what are you here for? Hey, what drink are you going for? That's a very easy way to do it. If there is no bar, then if there's someone by themselves, go and talk to them, of course.
If there's no bar, you're at the wrong event.
Maybe, absolutely. And then, yeah, literally, at first, you will be a bit nervous, and that's normal. That's perfectly fine. We're all a bit nervous. But at some point, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to have fun. And if you have fun, then you're going to be more relaxed, and then everyone will enjoy themselves. The other advice I have, sometimes you're at a networking event, and you're stuck in a really boring conversation. You want to walk away, right? We've all been there. You're talking to someone, you just talk and talk and talk forever. You just want to get away. Don't be shy and interrupt them and say, hey, I'm loving this conversation, but can we continue this over coffee tomorrow? Because I'd love to speak to more people tonight. Is that okay? And just feel free to interrupt them to say that. And they won't be offended because they understand that you're there to talk to as many people as possible, right? So again, it's not offensive to interrupt someone. Don't be shy, interrupt people, say, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn and let's continue this conversation tomorrow, or another day, right? That's a very perfectly fine thing to say. Another way to do it is say, hey, I'd love to continue this conversation, but there's so many other people I want to speak to tonight. Can you recommend anyone else I should speak to? So ask them to recommend someone else to speak with. Or simply ask them, who's the coolest person you've met tonight, right? Ask them, and boom, go and talk to that person. Again, these are simple ways to cut short a conversation, because really the goal of a networking event is not to have long, in-depth conversations. The goal of a networking event is to meet as many people as possible and quickly move on to the next person. But then, of course, make sure to connect with them on LinkedIn and then continue the conversation after the event. So follow up with them on LinkedIn. Say, hey, it was great meeting you. Should we go for coffee in the next couple of days, right? And that's a very important point, by the way. Make sure you follow up with every person you meet. That is super important. That's not a small detail. That is actually crucial, because otherwise it's a waste of time. If you speak to them and never speak to them again, it's a waste of time. You have to follow up, right? Every single person. Super important. Don't forget that.
Great advice. Great
These are
advice.
my top tips then for networking.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I had one more question. I don't want to keep hogging, so I'm going to give the reins back to Mick in just a second. But the final question I have for you on this topic, at least, is what are some of the places where you can find good networking events to go to that would be relevant for you?
I mean, the main website listing every event in London is called Eventbrite, and you can do a search on Eventbrite. But the issue with Eventbrite is there's too many events. There's like 100 events a week in London. And so it's a bit too much. You don't really know which ones are good, which are not so good. So my recommendation is to go to one event, speak to the people there, and ask them for recommendations. Hey, which other event would you recommend? And then someone you meet will recommend another event, go to that event. And when you get to that event, ask people there, hey, which event do you recommend? And kind of that snowball effect of each event getting a recommendation to another event. Yeah. And over time, you're going to be added to loads of email distribution lists of all these event organizers. And so that's the way I do it. Another website I really like to use is called Luma, lu.ma, Luma. And Luma is a brand new website focusing mostly on startup events. And there's lots and lots of events on there, which are really, really good. So I use Luma a lot and Eventbrite, but most of it is word of mouth. Like I ask people for recommendations.
Hey, I've got a question for you, Mike, because you're obviously very knowledgeable and experienced about all the networking, like hidden rules. Like you were explaining, this is fine to do in this environment. This is not fine to do. We had a guest on the podcast a few months ago, and I forgot if it was a he or a she, but that person was saying that there's a problem, a generational problem with the SDRs and the BDRs actually speaking to people. Like they hide away and they're much more comfortable sending a written message than they are actually just talking to someone. And like they don't ring each other anymore. That was one of the examples, that they'd rather send a text, and if the phone rings, they're like, oh, what is that? Like there must be a massive issue. And obviously that next step is to go into a physical event and then go and shake someone's hand you've never met before, which like people my age, Heat's age, your age, like I think we're quite comfortable doing naturally. Like, do you feel like there is such a thing of a generational problem there, or are we just making it up?
I think you're right. However, I would say that some young people are very sociable by nature and some are not. And so my recommendation was, when you hire SDRs or BDRs, it should be part of the job description to be extremely sociable and being able to comfortably speak with people. So if you hire some SDRs or BDRs, make sure you test their verbal skills and their communication skills and their networking skills. So if part of the job interview should be to go to a physical in-person networking event with that person and see how they behave in a networking event before you hire them. For me, that should be part of their job description, right? And so if I was to hire a BDR or SDR, for me, that would be part of the job description, to be super sociable and be able to walk into a room full of strangers and talk to random strangers. I have met 17-year-olds who are super networkers, who go to networking events every day, who love to talk to people. And I've met 25-year-olds who are super shy and don't like to talk to people. So it's not just about age. I think it is about personal social skills. Some people are just more sociable than others, right? Now, on the other hand, it is a skill you can develop. When I was a small kid, when I was like 10 years old, I was super shy. I was not sociable at all. I was extremely shy. I was a super nerd behind my computer screen all day, right? And I would have died if you put me in a room full of strangers, right? And now I'm the king of networking, doing 15 events a week, right? So people can learn those skills. It's not like you can never learn these. Just come from practice. So if you were to hire a new SDR BDR, I would definitely test those skills and put that as part of the job description. If you have an existing SDR BDR who's already working for you and they're not very comfortable networking, I would bring them out of their comfort zone and go with them to a networking event. And slowly, they will come out of their shell and they'll practice those skills. Again, it's a skill you can learn, right? So train your BDRs and SDRs to become more sociable and become more comfortable talking to people. Again, it's something you can practice.
Amazing.
Very good.
Great advice, as always, Mike. However, unfortunately, we could talk to you forever, but we are just about out of time. We do have a wrap-up question, which we traditionally ask all of our guests. The question is, for your whole career to date, what is your favorite memory and why?
My favorite memory from my career, you mean, or from what part?
Well, you can give us both if you like. You can do career or personal. It's entirely up to you.
I would say my first ever business networking event was a game changer for me. It was about 10 years ago. I used to work for a very small technology company. It was about 35 employees. And I was head of business development for London. And I had never been to a business networking event, believe it or not. I had done cold calls, cold emails, all that kind of stuff. And so that company signed up to be members of the London Chamber of Commerce, which is based near St. Paul's, like in central London. And I went to my first ever business network event with them, with two of my colleagues. And I literally had zero expectations. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what the format of the event would be. I had literally zero expectation about it. And I got there at the beginning of the event. I literally just went to the bar to order a Coca-Cola, very basic. Just waiting at the bar. I was waiting for my drink. And there was a guy standing next to me. I just started chatting with him. Hey, what are you here for? What are you ordering? Again, it was a very natural conversation. Nothing was forced. Nothing was artificial. It was just like a normal day-to-day conversation like you'd have in any coffee shop. And it was just very friendly. And it's just a really friendly conversation. Just put me in a good mood. Like, oh, this guy's so friendly. And then I turned around and spoke to another person just there, and another one. And literally within 20, 30 minutes, I had worked the room and spoke to 20 people. And I just felt so exhilarated. I just felt so happy. I had like a big smile up to my ears. And most of our conversation had nothing to do with business, like nothing at all. We're talking about, events. We talk about drinks. We talk about, what was happening that summer. It was like random conversations. And I just had so much fun. I just enjoyed myself. And I back then we're using lots of business cards. I know nowadays no one uses business cards anymore. Now people connect on LinkedIn every day, but back then about 10 years ago, it was still good old fashioned business cards. And so I left that event with about 15, 20 business cards in my pocket. And I was super happy. And it's like, wow, this was great. And that was my first ever business networking event. And it completely changed my life because after that, I went to a second event and a third event and a fifth event. And literally over 2.5 years, I went to 1,000 events. And now my startup Introstars, it's completely changed. It's changing the world by helping millions of people become super networkers, monetizing their network, building connections, building networking, building those networking connections. And yeah, for me, that was an amazing memory. It changed the whole game for me. So again, my advice to anyone out there, just go to one event, just one. It might change your life, right? And become a super networker and enjoy the process, because every time you introduce two people to each other, you create a new opportunity. It's like you're opening a new door. It's like 1 + 1 = 3, right? And so my spiritual mission in life is to connect 1 million people out there, either myself or via my website, introstars.com, where anyone can become an introducer, a super connector, have fun doing it, make the world a better place. and earn shitloads of money doing it as well. So it's like a win-win-win. So that's my message to the world. Now go to networking events, go to introstars.com and start making connections.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. But it is time to say goodbye. So that's it today from the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Until next time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye bye.